All right, here we are. Happy New Year's, everybody. Welcome to Silicon Zombies BrainWaves on 92.9 FM in Los Gatos, 101.9 FM in Santa Cruz. So, BrainWaves is brought to you by some wonderful folks at Nicodex. That's www.necodex.com. And we get to demystify emerging technologies and share all sorts of wonderful stories with great community leaders. And we've got a couple of them on the show today as well. So let's go ahead and light this candle. First and foremost, Gargi, Mariane, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Pretty excited.
Yes.
Super excited to be here. Okay, so while we're kind of getting situated here, perhaps we could do a little introduction. Would love to hear about all the amazing things you're building at Founders Bay and all the wonderful communities that you get to support in conjunction with yours. So, Mariane, start us off here. Welcome to Zombies.
Thank you, Nick. I'm so excited to be here. I think that this is like the third conversation we have that on your radio show.
Yeah.
A little bit about me. So I've been leading engineering teams here in the Bay Area for the last 15 years. I've led engineering teams through multiple exits, and then throughout my career, I've always found myself being one of the only women in the room, the only woman of color in the room. So I've dedicated the majority of my career to promoting more women in tech. And then a few years ago, I started my own company to help companies hire more women engineers. So I found myself being an accidental entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah.
And then I started going to all these founder events. And again, I would find myself being the only woman in the room. So I'm like, well, where are the women founders? I can't find them. So then that's when I decided to start my own community of tech female founders. Now we're one of the largest and most active community in the Bay Area. We're called Women Founders Bay, and we support over 500 startups, all female founded.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I love your shirt, Bet on Women.
That's right. Shout out to Toby Prosky, who's one of the first investors in SpaceX. Who gave me this shirt.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I want one.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, but throughout this, I started a newsletter where every week I report on all the events happening in the Bay Area called Founders Bay Weekly. And then in the last year, we grew to over 32,000 subscribers.
Holy smokes.
So we're growing really, really fast. And our community has almost every founder and VC in the Bay Area. And then we organize events every week to bring them together.
So clearly filling an important gap in the market.
Definitely.
Misfortune breeds opportunity. Right?
Exactly. And if you think about being a founder, it's such a lonely journey. And even though with so many resources out there, 98% of startups fail. So we're trying to change them by giving them community support. We organize workshops, we organize events, we connect them with investors. So we're trying to change the game for all founders in the Bay Area.
I see. And when you say 98% of startups fail, is that because like founders disagree with each other, or there's what are the reasons that these things generally happen, do you think?
So there's multiple reasons. One of the most common one is just simply the founder burns out.
Yeah.
A lot of founders, especially if you're so passionate about your product, you're gonna go and you're gonna work maybe like 80 to 120 hours a week on it, and then it's sustainable for a certain period of time. But after a year of that, you end up burning out. Once you burn out, then you don't want to work on your company anymore. You close it down. Yeah. The other reason is co-founder mismatch. Finding someone you can work with for 80 hours a week is very hard, and finding the right person. So a lot of disagreement make it burn. And the third one is simply like mismanagement of runway, right? If you mismanage your runway, you run out of money, you're not able to find product market fit. That's another reason why startup fail.
So, Gargi, you're pretty fortunate to get to work with Mariane, who's a total sweetheart.
Yeah.
And so, tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's kind of get the things kicked off here.
Love it. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. Very exciting. A little bit of background about me. My name is Gargi. I have been a part of Women Founders Bay for the past 6.5 months, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Before that, I was working on Girls in Tech, so I was leading communities, events, basically the same concept of really promoting women in STEM, empowering through different events, getting more exposure for women in all of these tech, VC, entrepreneurship events that are very male dominated. And especially growing up in the Bay Area, I've always been passionate about communities, computer science, tech, entrepreneurship. But the biggest thing that I was seeing is even in a class of 400 people, in a CS classroom, I only saw me being one woman out of 10.
Wow.
Out of a class of 400.
Oh my God.
And that was only 4 years ago. So that was pretty shocking and drastic for me. So in college, I was very passionate about building a network for women in computer science. So that was one of the biggest clubs in college. And post-college and post-pandemic, I really felt there was a really big need for bringing the women founders community in engineering, tech, STEM, things like that. So that's why I joined Girls in Tech, and after that, Women Founders Space. I've been leading events with Mariane for the past couple months, and it's been an absolute pleasure. I've gotten so much great feedback from all of these women founders coming back and saying, you've created a space for me that feels safe, protected, and they just want to see women founders really thrive and excel in this space.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Do you think, thank you for giving a little bit of background, Gargi.
Yeah, of course.
Do you think that maybe there was like a silver lining being like one of the few ladies in the room, like perhaps from a market arbitrage perspective, it's like, hey, there's a huge opportunity here that there are other women that are interested in science, technology, engineering, math, and also want support, want community.
Yeah, I think the biggest driving force for me is I'm also a product manager at AT&T, and I lead a team of over 35 people, and there are only 2 women on my team. And so just things like that. And even I'm leading growth at a consumer social startup right now, and every single other person is a guy. So
does AT&T know about this side hustle?
On the deal.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't worry, we're live right now.
There's only how many? Like 15,000?
Only 15,000 people.
Well, the other thing is like if you don't have a side hustle in the Silicon Valley, like
everyone's doing 5 different things.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
exactly. But I think there's a really big need for just bringing the women community together.
Yeah.
Because just working with guys on the daily, I
Sure.
need more women in these spaces, and
Yeah.
that's why I joined this community and leading events for all of these women to see that there's so many cool women founders
Yeah.
building cool products.
Yeah.
Because they're only seeing all of the male founders and VCs, so just building a network there.
For sure. I remember this kind of like trite, glib marketing slogan from back in the 50s for when they would take a male product and make it female, they would pink it and shrink it, which is kind of ridiculous because like if you ever heard of this before?
No, I haven't.
So like if taking like a razor, for example,
Oh, yeah.
like, you know, they would make it smaller,
Yep.
paint it pink, all of a sudden,
The pink
there you
dots.
go. You got
That's
a whole
what we
nother pink and trinket market, but
Yeah.
that's not really like, you want a product to be developed by the person using it because they're going to be more closely associated with like the frustrations and maybe how to improve, you know, granted like razors in the 50s, like we've come a long way since then. But how are you thinking about how products are made for women today that maybe that dynamic didn't exist prior? Or how are products more better suited to serve women today?
So I'll give you a story that I heard when I was at MindBody. There was a room of executive. There was only one woman in the room, and then they were discussing priorities for the next quarter. One of the story or one of the feature they were discussing is the ability for someone to change their name on the platform. So then all the men in the room were like, well, why would anybody ever want to change their name? Right? And then the woman said, well, when I got married, I changed my last name. And I think over 70% of women after they get married change their names. So if women are not in the room where those decisions are being made, the product are not optimized for us. And you can see that in every industry, especially in healthcare right now, where I think until the 1950s, women were not even studied in clinical trials. And most doctors are not even aware of the different types of diseases happening for women. So we need more women in these rooms to share those experiences so that products are optimized for us.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm cautious to draw a parallel against like something, for example, like institutionalized racism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always cautious on like leaning too far into that because I think it can go too far into like the space of like victimization and like leaning on that as opposed to, just figuring out how to solve a problem and creating a community, kind of like you have.
Definitely.
However, especially if you think of like within regards to like health tech, like if the entire population is not being tested or treated or observed or products created for them equally, that kind of creates like some interesting foundational discrepancies. Gargi, what are your thoughts here, specifically as it pertains like health, for example?
Right. I think I definitely agree with that. I think products definitely need to be catered to as many people as possible. Obviously, people of color, women, men, just to make sure that they are really serving the entire demographic. And I really saw a need in the market right now. I've been talking to a couple of women founders lately who are building in the health tech space. And I think it's a very booming industry, and there need to be more with female founders actually building for the space.
Do you want to give them a shout out?
Yeah, I'd love to. Her name is Katie, and she is a recent addition to the Women Founders Bay community. She's been working on a product for the past couple months, and I think it's very important. And there are also so many people building in the space. And we're also doing Women in Healthcare like summit coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we're planning that in progress.
Is this by chance in partnership with Nexus and what Priti Dugar is doing? By chance?
No, it's just separate. This is still in talks, but it's going to be something in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We had Priti on the show 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, she has such an amazing energy.
Yeah, she really does. You probably both get asked to partner and support and collaborate all the time because you're both wonderful leaders and have great integrity and have a super impressive track record, both of you. And it probably gets a little old after a while. However, when you do get somebody that's so rooted in their why, like Priti, it's like you want to just kind of make room for that, just because it feels good to support people that are aligned in their why. Also, I feel like AT&T is kind of in a similar space. Like they're one of the longest lasting companies, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Probably because they're not focused on a technology or a product, but instead a core foundational value, which is good communication.
Right.
How are you seeing this play out in getting to work for them, or can you talk about this at all?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. We'll steer away from that then. But I guess just like in a very general sense, like what's your philosophy on how to create a company that can withstand the test of time?
Yeah, I think it all starts with having the right people in place, right? If you have a strong team, then you can withstand a lot of the hurdles that comes in building in a company. But another thing, and I think I want to reiterate of what you said, is having a strong why, right? What is the values that you share as a company, and why are you doing the things that you're doing? And even if, let's say, you have an extremely strong team, if you don't have a why guiding them, if you don't have common values and common goals, then that team will not be as motivated to make the company as successful as it could be. So I think having like a leadership team that understands that part of your role as a leader is gathering all these people around you, gathering strong people, but also motivating them and giving them a guiding light is extremely important in withstanding a lot of the things that happen when you're building a company.
That's brilliantly put. How do you think that Founders Bay is able to stay so focused or aligned on that? Because it's one thing to say, hey, we're about this. It's another to have your actions reflect that.
Yeah, I think that the reason why, I started Women Founders Bay, and the reason why I started Founders Bay is because I've had the same why my entire life. Like growing up in the Arabic community, especially, after being a refugee in Canada, I've always known that I've wanted to help women and women of color succeed. And our why is very simple. It's really to create a tech industry where women have the same opportunities to succeed. And everything we do drives toward that. And we never use it our why. But what's more important, and I think even though we're a small team, the reason why we're able to do everything that we're doing is that so many people are resonating with our whys, and our biggest supporters is our community. So they are the one who kind of put us on shows like yourself. They are the one who are promoting us. They are the one who are coming to help us during the events and volunteering. So I'm very, very grateful that people are resonating with that why, and they're helping us.
It feels good to hang out and work with people that you're like, hey, we share the same values, and like we want to help kind of like a rising tide raises all boats.
Exactly. And then what I love about the tech community is that the more I get to meet either women or men, we all have the same mission. Everybody wants to make tech more diverse, because like, do you want to walk in a room and 90% of the people are just men, or do you prefer to walk in the room?
I would leave that part.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. This is not a fun party. You want to walk in a room and then see diversity. It's more fun that way. And then a few weeks ago, we organized the Women Founders Bay holiday party, and one man came to me and he's like, Mariane, I don't like going to other tech events anymore because I don't feel comfortable when I walk to other tech event and 90% of the people in that room are just men. I want to see women. I want to see diversity. And I think we can all resonate with that.
For sure. I could see not being intrigued or compelled, but maybe does he feel for his physical safety, or what is it that he didn't feel safe about? I wonder.
I don't think that it's not that he doesn't feel safe.
Uncomfortable, maybe.
Yeah, maybe just uncomfortable, right? Because there's no diversity of thought. It's not as fun as having everybody in the population being represented, right? You want to have different topics, you want to have different perspective, and it's more fun that way.
No doubt. Not to mention, like, the data speaks to it as well. It was one of the big four consulting firms. I forget who it was. Maybe I think it was Deloitte. No,
Deloitte or McKinsey, I think. Yeah.
Are you familiar with this? Where they did the like publicly traded companies who have women on the executive lead.
Oh, right.
They perform like 25+% better, which is insane. That to me, as a shareholder of like a hypothetical shareholder of a firm, would almost be like, okay, this needs to be on the agenda,
exactly,
to make sure that the revenues are going to be up, because that's kind of the single goal theoretically of a company, is return shareholder value.
Exactly. And I saw that happening at MindBody. So I was brought in to start their SF team, and then we grew from 7 to over 50. But in my SF engineering team, we were able to achieve 55% women engineer ratio, and we quickly became the most productive team at MindBody because of that diversity. That then they took us to like start their Pune office once that happened. So it's no longer like diversity is just cool and it's the right thing to do. It actually creates better business revenue. It creates better business culture, and the company can be more successful because of it.
Yeah, exactly. Just to play devil's advocate, because it's more fun that way.
Definitely.
Like taking this concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's like obviously there's good societal impacts as well. However, I do feel pretty confident in saying that meritocracy is equally as important. Like, we want to choose the most qualified person for the job. How do we kind of, and I don't have the right answer here, but Gargi, how do you think we kind of manage both of these dynamics?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree, because I've done many rounds of interviews, obviously, as a product manager. And one of the main things is we have the same questionnaire goes out to everyone, male, female, different types of color, whatever. So obviously when we are picking candidates, we are basing it off of their skill level, expertise, but also how out of the box solutions that they're creating, how different perspectives that they're bringing, different values that they're bringing to the table, past experiences, things like that. But obviously we want to promote more women in the industry as well. So when I am interviewing different candidates, I am not giving preference, but definitely amplifying women voices.
Sure.
So if there are a candidate pool of 10 people and 6 of them are men and 4 of them are female, I'm going to have at least 1 more female represented, because already in my team, we have so many males. So I want to amplify more women voices and get more women on my team, especially as engineers.
And I bet you that employee turnover is probably less when you have a more diverse.
Exactly.
That's like I just kind of thought of that now, but it's like an important factor because it's an expensive thing to find a new employee as opposed to like retain one. You know?
And I want to talk about meritocracy for a second,
Sure.
right? In an ideal world, in a world where biases don't exist, meritocracy works well, right? Because then unbiasedly you can basically have the same questionnaires, you can evaluate all the candidate equally and pick the right person for the job or the best person in this job. But the world does not work that way. There are so many biases around, and one of the biggest bias is we tend to prefer people who are similar to us. That's just a bias that has been studied, that has been proven, right? So then when there is this companies like, oh, we don't believe in DEI, we believe in meritocracy, and we always pick the best person for that role. But the person who is picking the best person has biases, right? So they're going to tend to rate people who are similar higher.
Sure.
So because of these biases, you can't always say, oh, we're picking the best person in the room, because you are judging them differently. And then there's so many studies that show that I'm very technical, Gargi is very technical. When a woman walks in the room, automatically when someone scores her technical wise, she has 2 points less than men, because they're like, oh, she doesn't fit the standard technical profile. So as a result, I don't believe that she's as technical. And all of these are unconscious bias that happen.
So you're saying we should put our finger on the scale then?
I think that we should put systems in place to reduce biases as much as possible. And then for MindBody, what we did is a few things. Like Gargi said, we had a standardized questionnaire that was as quantitative as possible, not qualitative. Like, okay, rate this question on the logical from like 1 to 10, for example. The other thing is making sure that the people interviewing those candidates, half of them are women. So then, because if you have that bias where we tend to judge people who are similar to us higher, if you have at least 50% of the interviewers in the room being women, then you're going to have less of these bias happening as well. So there's a lot of these like little steps that we can take to try to remove this unconscious bias.
I guess it probably depends on the job as well. Like, for example, like you're probably familiar with this, the old example where it's like for I think it was like the San Francisco or the New York Philharmonic. They would put up a velvet curtain in front of the player and just listen to the music, and that ended up kind of equaling things out. And at the end of the day, so
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gargi, have you had any? I guess this actually goes for both of you ladies. Have you had mentors who helped you understand that maybe the playing field was not totally fair? Yeah. And then B, how to navigate in a graceful way, because I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes.
Right.
And if the game is kind of stacked against you, I think it's easy to get pissed off, like a little bit. But being angry or vitriolic, that doesn't get us anywhere. So tell us about your mentors that have had an impact on you personally on how to navigate all this.
Yeah, so I think definitely post-COVID, going into the workforce, kind of being new to everything, just seeing a lot of more male in the industry. I was very used to it because in college, that was kind of the dynamic that, 400 people, 10 women, very used to that. So I think I made it a point, especially early on in my career, to have a lot of females in leadership roles who are very inspiring and motivational for me, as people that I can use as reference points in terms of what I want my career path and my journey to be.
So you sought them out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just going on LinkedIn, going through like referrals, connections, things like that, going to a lot of networking events. This was before my time at Women Founders Space. I didn't really have a network of anyone to rely on or refer to. And I think that was what made it really challenging for me, because I was blindly throwing darts and kind of picking and choosing.
It sounds dangerous.
I know, exactly. So I think that is why it's really just important to build the community. So people who are very new, especially female founders who don't have other female founders who they can rely on in terms of like resources, network, getting deals, getting people, things like that. And we have a really popping community on WhatsApp right now. We are texting back and forth within minutes. If someone has a question about anything, intro to a VC, a food recommendation, anything random, we are texting back and forth constantly. And I think that is very important, to the point where people want in on this community, because we are close, we are growing, and we really want to support each other. And I think that's what everything is about. And we are providing mentorship to a lot of these ladies too.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, I think it's really important to have a lot of like female role models. And Mariane is that to me too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about maybe some specific role models that maybe like a light bulb moment, or something that was very impactful for you that kind of like shifted how you approached.
Yeah, so I think this would be in around March of this year. I was in big tech for the past 5 years, and I have been, and I'm very new to the startup space. So I joined the startup in March, and I had all of this community is very new to me in terms of startups, VCs, founders, networking events, all of this. My intro was this year. So I put myself in as many just places to meet new people as possible. And one connection that I made, it was actually through my dad's coworker. She is a successful startup founder. Her name is Nidhi. She's in Hustle Fund. She's been leading communities for the past many years. So I cold reached out to her just about getting into the space. And I think she was a really good mentor to me. She told me to read a lot of different books to just increase my skill level, knowledge, things like that. And I think that was really helpful for me too. She told me all the like resources, the books to read, the events to go to, and different like courses to take. And I think that really helped. But it's really hard to know what a startup is like from a book. So that's when I started just messaging a lot of people on LinkedIn about like working for startups. I just did it like freelance, no pay, no equity, nothing, just doing like social media marketing, product management, just getting my feet wet in as many things as possible. And I think that really helped open a lot of doors for me.
I really love how you mentioned that you put yourself in this space to be lucky. I mean, I might be kind of like hearing a little bit, but I think Mark Zuckerberg was like pretty famous for that. I was just listening to the podcast Acquired.
Oh, I was listening to it the other day.
Yeah,
so good.
The same one.
Yeah, the Meta one.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like shocked at like how compelling it was, and like I saw The Social Network, great movie, but I was like, maybe this is like baloney a little bit. It's just I feel like it was probably like made for TV, so to speak.
Right.
So to get like the actual understanding of how Facebook was created is so wild, because Mark was doing I think like 10 or 15 or 20 different like small projects, and most of them failed. Well, I think that's like probably a good metaphor for like life and entrepreneurism. And then when something does hit, you double down. I think AI, it has like some kind of interesting applications. What are your thoughts here?
I think that we are living in one of the most exciting times in the world.
Yeah.
And I think AI is going to disrupt every single industry, and it's just going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
It's going to make every industry more efficient. It's going to allow us to live longer, right?
Mariane Bekker, the techno-optimist.
The techno-optimist.
I love it.
I mean, I know that a lot of people are scared about AI, right? Because they're like, okay, well, it's going to replace a lot of jobs and everything. The reason why I'm not too concerned about that, because the best predictor of the future is the past, right? And in the past, anytime there's a new technology that came out, yes, there was a lot of jobs that were lost, but there was so many more jobs getting created. And we didn't know back then what these jobs were going to be like. Nobody could have anticipated before the computer that software engineering would have been a role, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't know yet what these roles are going to be, but I know it's going to happen. And I know that it's going to create a lot of prosperous economical advantages for all of us.
It's so easy to see how things are connected in hindsight, right?
Exactly.
They say hindsight is 2020. I think that probably means it's like 2020 vision. It's like super clear. I'm gonna go out on a limb there, but it's kind of crazy. Like from horses to automobiles, and once we have automobiles, we get the freeway. And once we have freeways, we have like the little kind of like the soda burger shop stands right next to it. And then of course that gave rise to like the automobile kind of like the cool 1950s soda pop thing. So it's like, it's strange to see these things in retrospect because it all felt fresh.
Exactly. And even automobile, like Ford is the one who kind of started this thing called like agile methodology, like the way that you build products. And even now, this is the most popular way to build software. So we're learning from these past moments about, and we're applying what we learned from the past to these new technologies, and it's going to be the same for AI.
I want to get back into the agile thing in just a quick moment, but if you're just tuning in now, you're listening to Silicon Zombies BrainWaves on Pirate Cat Radio. That's 92.9 FM in Los Gatos, 101.9 in Santa Cruz. And we've got the Founders Bay gals here. So Mariane, back to you. You're talking a little bit about agile methodologies. So for the layperson who's tuning in, what is agile and how does it apply to building product?
Agile is the way to build products. So what does that mean? In the past, right, because products could not be built easily, there was this thing called the waterfall method, where basically you go in a room, you plan out what the product is going to look like. You probably do that for multiple months or multiple years, and then you write like big document for it, you do a prototype, and then you release it to the market. But that way of building product is not really successful because throughout that time, you're not really getting customer feedback. So agile methodologies really changed all that, where now the best way to build product, and I always advise that to founders, is to try to build in public. What that means is figure out the most viable product that you can build, maybe one feature that you can release in software that maybe can take you like 8 weeks to release, even if it's very bare bone, even if it's not great. Find that one feature, release it, and then start getting customer feedback about how they're using that feature. Once you have that, then you improve that feature, you start adding on more feature, and you do that throughout the life cycle of your company, where you're always releasing as fast as possible, getting customer feedback and iterating over it.
Kind of going back to Meta, I think that's how they approach product development too.
Exactly.
It like move fast, break things, and iterate, as opposed to like Apple, which will wait until the product is essentially perfect and then mass market and all the rest. However, just to kind of push back against that, Mariane, I feel like there's some intellectual property, like maybe kind of keeping some of it secret, so to speak. How do you kind of manage both of those things, where it's like building it public, but also keeping some of your strategies, some of your technologies, maybe your roadmap under wraps, kind of, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there has to be a balance, obviously, right? Because you don't want to you don't want to show all your cards to your competitors. But when you're building agile, you don't really need to display your future product roadmap, right? It's more you're releasing fast, people see it as you go along. But there are some industry, like if you're building a deep tech product, then it makes more sense to maybe just keep your IP protected. But nowadays, especially if you're building software, I don't know, I always tell founders, like, even if your competitors learn about what you're doing, right? The market is so big, the world is so big that even if, let's say, someone is building the exact same thing as you, it doesn't really matter, because there's always customer profiles that you can go and you can reach that is different from your competitor. So I wouldn't be afraid to kind of just build in public, and also it builds community as well. When you are building in public, when you're telling people what you're building, when you're sharing your struggles, you get more committed customers. You get the buy-in. Yeah, exactly. So the advantage, you have to really evaluate the advantage and disadvantage, but in most cases, the advantage of building in public is always higher than not.
Yeah, the one kind of like unique counterpoint to that, I would suppose, is how anybody who invests in OpenAI can't invest in Grok or Perplexity or whatever. Yeah, all these other platforms. And Sam's justification was like, well, if you want to invest in them, that's fine, but we want to make sure to kind of keep our roadmap kind of under wraps, so to speak, which kind of makes sense.
That makes sense.
speaking of which, how come I feel like there needs to be a female leader driving one of these large LLMs, like an Elon Musk, like a Sam Altman, somebody like this. Is this top of mind for you at all? Have you given any thought to this, like a leader in the space?
So I think you're 100% right, is that right now AI is booming and there aren't a lot of women founders in that space. So as a result, we're not seeing maybe women leaders leading these like big companies. But I think we're trying to change that, right? In a world where currently, I don't know if you know that statistic, Nick, and it's mind blowing to me, is that even though women start 50% of all the businesses in the US and they start over 35% of all the tech businesses, women are still receiving less than 2% of all VC funding. And OpenAI, for it to grow, they had to spend $100 million for it to come to that point,
It's
right?
expensive to train these models.
It's expensive to build tech. It's expensive. We need money. But if we're only receiving 2% of the funding, we're not receiving the $100 million from investor to have a big company that way. So we need to start small. We need to start changing that game so that we can create more women leaders, more women founders who are building these big companies.
And it'll get its own natural momentum.
Exactly.
We had Peter Walker on maybe 3 months ago.
Like that.
This is up in San Francisco. He runs insights at Carta.
Yeah.
They've got like 45,000 customers. So from the equity management play, some pretty cool aggregated anonymous data. And he said that things are trending like very positive in that direction, which is good news. But still a lot of work to be done. So how can we imagine that there are women that are listening now that are like, okay, I want to have a meaningful impact in this direction, because it's venture capital is the fuel that kind of keeps the engine going. What are some kind of practical things aside from joining Founders Bay? What are some kind of practical ways that people can get involved, guys or gals, that want to kind of help things along?
Yeah, so I think one of the great things that we do is we host a lot of great events for women and men, and we keep it open and as diverse as possible. And a lot of the focus for these events, they have different topics. So we have a whole series on AI. So we have influential speakers about AI agents, and we have VC panels, things like that. And just having a lot of investors, whether they be male or female, just having them in the space. So even when we do a lot of these like more social parties and things like that, we make sure that we are bringing a lot of influential VCs through the door so that people can meet and make intros in a very informal setting. Because I feel like it's very hard in a networking setting it's very contractual, right?
Sure.
Like you are giving me something, I'm giving you something. But if it's in a social environment where the vibes are good, people are mingling, we're just making sure we have as many female founders there. So that when different VCs are coming, they are having the opportunity to talk to all these amazing female founders. I think just getting very like influential people through the door who have a lot of money, who can help support all of these female founders. So just getting as many people through the door, and even having, I know a couple people came to me for one of these events that we threw. We did a big celebration of women entrepreneur event. So we had over 200 people show up, women founders, VCs. We did a whole 3-hour curated event. And one of the guys there told me, this is a great space, and we don't see as many male attending all female events too. And I think we want to see more males there too, because they have a network and they can help support this community. So I had over 5 guys come up to me, reach out to me, and they shared their contacts with me, and we got to provide all of that to all of the people coming to our events.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's about even all the guys in the space really supporting female founders, and that's where we can help get more VC funding.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add on to that. By the way, Gargi always organized like the best events.
Parties can't be overrated.
Yeah, exactly. But it starts with all of us coming together, right? And right now, one of the biggest distribution channel that we have is social media. So let's say you're a man or you're a woman and you want to help promote women in entrepreneurship. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, and you see a women founder or you see a woman in tech post something, go and like it,
Engage.
go comment,
It's
go
great. It's easy.
repost.
Yeah.
Let's bring women's voices to the top. And that takes 2 seconds of your time. There's no money commitment, there's no time commitment needed. That's one thing that you can do. The other thing is that if you go to an event, or if you're hosting an event like you did in the longevity summit that you hosted, which was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you for the partnership.
I love partnering with you, but you came to me and you're like, Mariane, this is a room that you can use to put your program in, right? And there we put over like 8 women speakers, right? So these small gesture, if you're hosting an event, make sure that at least 50% of the panelists are women. Go and collaborate with women group to bring them to the top. If we start really amplifying women voices, we're really going to change this narrative that there's not enough women founders, there's not enough women in tech, and we can all come together and really make a change that way. So small gestures like that go a long way.
That's a brilliant example, because it doesn't cost anything. It's just like a small mindset shift that can really kind of get its own momentum. Gargi, you mentioned a little bit about the agentic framework, and I know agents, they say like 2025 is going to be the year of robotics, the year of agents. Can you maybe explain for the audience what is an agent and what's coming next?
Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting topic because I've been in the generative AI and conversational AI space for a while. That's my product at AT&T, and essentially they are virtual assistant or virtual agents that basically help you out with your day-to-day in any form or any capacity. And I know Mariane is actually partnering with a great company that has been sponsoring a lot of our events at Women Founders Way too. So I'd love for you to speak more on that too.
Definitely. So agents are pieces of software that could interact with the digital world on your behalf and can do multiple steps for you. So for example, let's say you are booking a plane ticket or you are going on a trip. Basically, an agent is something that you can say, hey agent, book a trip for me in Spain, find the hotel, find my itinerary, and that piece of software will go interact with the internet and do multiple steps to kind of solve the problem that you have. And I really believe that agents are the future, because right now we lose a lot of time doing like these manual steps that we don't even realize, like writing an email, following up on emails, even like booking trips, and at work, even like creating a social media strategy. But I really believe that in the future, we're going to have these like small agents that will do tasks for us and will be our own like executive assistant. And I'm so excited to have partnered with the Agentic, because right now the problem with these agents is that they're not very accurate, right? If you go tell an agent like, hey, book a trip for me, I probably won't trust it because the technology is not there yet. But with the Agentic, they were able to build an LLM that is 90% cheaper than OpenAI and 10% more accurate. So I think the future, we're going to see more and more of these like personal assistant for all the tasks being created for us.
It's interesting that you mentioned the price point, because I know that it makes a big difference. I believe the Chinese just recently launched a model that is like 1/10 of the price from an energy consumption space, which is something that maybe it's kind of easy to overlook. Speaking of which, energy, are there any wonderful female leaders in the community that you want to give a shout out, or maybe not just energy, but women in general that we can share for folks that are tuning in here and go check out our website?
I have so many of them.
You're like, let me
our entire
list. 3,000.
I want to give a shout out to when Maria Lenz. I know that she is building a femtech product for women to get the right support for their health. Ariel Watson, she's building a product for PMDD. I want to give a shout out to Ursula, who's been volunteering for all of our events. And honestly, every single one of those women, we have 500 women now in our community, and we're all supporting each other. We're all here for each other. And we're really on just one mission, is to really make tech more diverse and to bet on women, like your shirt says.
That's right. And what about yourself, Gargi? Any ladies you want to give a shout out to?
So many people, as Marianne said. One of it is Pallavi. She's building in conversational AI, the same space as me. There is also Sneha. She is currently working for Salesforce, but is very passionate about healthcare and femtech. And also,
yes, I think Jenny Chang, who is going to join us for Women Founders Bay.
And also Anna Yuan with Skill Growth AI. So many female leaders who are really disrupting the space.
Erica Barr with Dax, who's disrupting like the AI space.
Mm-hmm.
Just have too many to name.
No, that's a thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. If we think about both of you as leaders in the community that want to have this important shift in the right direction, kind of change the narrative, how can we measure it? Because it's kind of a tricky thing. Like they say, if you can't measure it, then you can't manage it. How do we know we're actually moving in the right direction? I mean, I guess it's on one degree, it's maybe it's fairly simple challenge, just because when there's so much to fix and you only fix something like a little bit over here and then you can double it, all of a sudden you're starting to get a like compounding value, okay. Right?
I think that in the last year we made a lot of changes, and then when I first started this journey, maybe a year and a half ago, I would go to maybe 90% of the tech events and I wouldn't see women founders. But now when you walk to a tech event, it's actually very diverse, and all of our events, whether it's just Women Founders Bay or Founders Bay, that's both men and women, 50% are women there. So you are seeing changes. And now with my newsletter, so this is why I started the newsletter. In the past, all these events, it was all like exclusive circles. It was really hard to figure out like what are the founder and VC events happening in the Bay Area. But with my newsletter, I post about it every week. And because over like 50% of my subscribers are women, a lot of the women show up. So I don't know if you've seen that as well.
Oh, I think you're going to say, have I seen your post? I'm like,
no,
yeah, I always like the post.
If you walk into an event now, there's a lot more women there, and it just starts with that.
Sure.
And then a lot of men like yourself, like Brian Sparks, they're putting women on stage now. Bill Berry, exactly.
Yeah.
So we are seeing changes. What do you think, Gargi?
Yeah, I think same with me. I mean, we've hosted so many events in the past and they are primarily female, but if I go to events that I'm not hosting, we're seeing a lot more female founders there just because we are letting them know about all of these events, as Marianne said. I think the main thing is that the community feels very isolated, especially for female founders. They don't know a lot of other female founders. So if they have access to the network resources and events, they know exactly where to be, what space to be, where to be, what event to go to, especially to get their name out there, then they'll be there because they're very passionate about what they're building. All of the female founders that we have in the community, they are passionate, they're scrappy, they're hustlers.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just give them access to all of the amazing events in the community, that they're going to be there. And we've already seen that shift, as Mariane said.
Yeah, plus, like we said before, parties with all guys are just kind of lame.
Exactly.
So have either one of you experienced, and maybe this was kind of more of a frustration or a challenge from 30, 40 years ago, but blatant sexism or just kind of chauvinistic attitudes, have either one of you had to deal with that personally without using names?
Yeah.
And then how did you navigate that while keeping your cool?
I think definitely. So many times, not specifically in the Women Founders Bay community, but I do events apart from that as well. For example, we did a huge TechCrunch Disrupt side event. So we had over 1,000 RSVPs for the launch of our startup, and we had over 600 people show up. It was a great event. And one VC, a male, he came up to me asking for the host, and he said, "This was a terrible event. I don't want to be here. It's because women like you are hosting events like this." And said a whole little spiel.
Sounds like he's
and then went on his merry way. So crazy like that, because it was a great event. We had over 600 people. A lot of people were mingling, chatting. A lot of women founders, VCs were there. But it was a little jarring to have someone come up and give a whole little paragraph about how the event was
Sure.
terrible.
I kind of feel bad
And
for the
then,
guy.
yeah, and even before I could say something, he stormed away. So
Wow.
it was a
Yeah.
crazy moment.
Have you ever heard of the phrase "hurt people hurt people"?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is a great example
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Don't worry about him. He's a ding dong. Yeah.
Exactly.
What about yourself, man?
I think there are two moments in my career that really impacted me, and I think I still think about these moments. When I was studying engineering in college, and that was 13 years ago, I'm a little bit older than you. Literally, in my 4-year program of engineering, there were 4 women throughout the entire program.
Wow.
But I remember this moment because it really impacted me, where I had a math course, and I went to see my math teacher during office hours to ask him about a question. So then he looked at me and he's like, well, women are just not good in math. Like, what are you doing in engineering? You shouldn't waste your time, even though he had a picture of his daughter there.
Yeah.
And then I remember I felt so bad for him and for his daughter, because I'm like, how could you even say that? You have a daughter, you have a mom. And then I ended up acing his math class. And then I ended up tutoring all the other guys in my classroom for the rest of my engineering
That's
career.
like a silent. No,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was one moment. And the other moment, and I think a lot of women experience that, is in one of my roles, actually one male colleague was getting very angry at me. He started harassing me. And later on, I found out that he was doing that because he had feelings for me and he didn't know how to act on them. Mm-hmm. And when I went to tell my manager about that, I resigned because he created such a toxic environment for me to be at. This manager went on to tell my friends that it happened. I'm the reason why this happened to me, because I was wearing nice clothes and nice earrings at work.
Yeah.
And these moments like that, exactly. How dare you? I am not wearing nice clothes for.
You're like, I can't help it that I look good.
So I think these two moments really impacted me and then motivated me now to really try to change things so that women like Gargi, who are amazing, don't have to experience that anymore.
So the first example you gave with the math teacher,
Mm-hmm.
did you call him out, or did you at least push back a little bit, or did you think to yourself, this is a teacher, I don't want to jeopardize my grade?
I didn't push back because I was a student, right? I didn't know anything, but I was already in an environment where I've never been in an environment where 99% of people I was with were men. So I didn't. And also, I was so focused on just getting A. I didn't really care about this teacher as much.
For sure.
So
there was a small bump in the road.
It was just a small bump in the road. But I'm like, okay, well, there are people who are thinking that way, right? Let me prove them wrong. I think it motivated me to prove him wrong.
Yeah. It's interesting because we take that kind of for granted, that all this that weirdness and that dynamic happened historically. But to happen,
it's
5, 10, 15 years ago, it's really still,
It is still happening now.
Let's shift over to I think creating products is such a cool thing. So let me back up a little bit. I had coffee with Mercedes Bankston, I don't know, a couple months ago. Super cool lady who runs FI with Deo. And she said that first-time founders focus on product, second-time founders focus on the customer, third-time founders focus on the community, which I think is just so brilliant because the space will shift. But if you have a community, if you have eyeballs that you can tap into, people that actually care about what we're building, no matter the competitive landscape, no matter changes in technology, adjacent or otherwise, they're gonna be there to not only adopt your product, but to give you feedback, to kind of like you had mentioned before. So what kind of cool products maybe do you have in store for physical, tangible products for Founders Bay? Is this something you've considered at all?
Yeah.
Maybe like a rosé?
So I don't, but I actually, when I saw this shirt,
I want
that shirt. I want that shirt.
Founders Bay rosé rhymes.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, that should be a thing.
Give you an example, right? Right now, community is probably the biggest advantage that a founder can have, because you can reproduce product, you can reproduce ideas, but you cannot reproduce community and you can't reproduce engagement. So for my newsletter, I've been running this newsletter for the last year. I don't know if everybody knows, but my Women Founders Bay nonprofit, I've been personally funding it, right? And it's grown way above me, than I ever thought possible because there's such a need for it. But 2 months ago, I started these membership tiers where now founders can join my membership. They can have free access to my workshop. They can have VIP access to my events. And I just started small. It's kind of a SaaS business if you think about it, right? Because they're paying a subscription fee. And because I have the community, in 2 months now we're at almost 80K ARR.
Wow. Congratulations.
Instantaneously.
I wish I had an applause button. We gotta figure out how to do that.
Instantaneously, because you have community, you have people supporting you, you have people believing in you. So that can never be reproduced. And 80K ARR, if you think about a product in 2 months, that's pretty huge for something like that.
It's
and
crazy
that just
fast growth.
it's very fast
Yeah.
growth, and that just talks about the power of community and building community first products.
Yeah. It's like building a house, but making sure it's like maybe it's going to take a little bit longer, but it'll be better in the long run.
You have an audience. You already have your customers that believe in you. So now you can just give them the product that they need, and they will buy it.
So we have about like 2 minutes left or so. I'd love to go around and maybe I want to give a quick moment to plug a website or so. But before we do that, we mentioned a couple books. Are there any cool books or podcasts aside from Silicon Zombies that we're listening to that you want to give a shout out to?
One of my favorite books that I read was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That really changed my life, just understanding the dynamics of people. And it's all about like giving back to the community. On the website front, if you'd like to subscribe to my newsletter, you can go to newsletter.foundersbay.com. Would love to have you part of my community.
I think one of my favorite books that I've been reading for the past couple of months have been The Hard Thing About Doing Hard Things.
Ooh,
Incredible book.
Dan Horowitz.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it just talks about grit, determination, and just how many things go wrong in a startup or in leading events or community. Like everything's going to go wrong. Just trust. But it's just about failing fast and just iterating really fast. And just having the people, support system, and community around you, because even if you pivot 5 times, the people who have been day ones in the community is going to stick with you. So I think that book has been really life-changing for me personally.
Yeah, great recommendation, both of you. We got a classic and then also something kind of newer too.
Yeah.
One of the stories I remember from Ben in that book was, I want to say it was like Cloudflare or some like early ISP company.
Yeah.
And they were about to lose one of their biggest clients because one of the sales guys had like pissed off the buyer. But then they realized that their buyer, who is I think responsible for like 30-40% of the revenue, was dealing with an entirely separate problem from a different product. Mm-hmm. So Ben and his team went to go create that product and said, hey, I know you're upset with us, but we also know that you're dealing with this separate challenge and you're like losing sleep at night. So we made it for you and we're not going to charge you. And he ended up like which just kind of goes back to show this is all like relationships.
Yeah.
So they saved the account. I think like 6 months later, they sold the company for like hundreds of millions and like right in the midst of a .com bust. Wow. So yeah, pretty
incredible.
Cool. Like, you know,
that's really cool.
For sure. Also, I guess in the remaining couple minutes that we have here, how are you thinking about, so here's an aha moment that I had recently, is that relationships are super crucial, of course, but really it kind of comes down to actually getting a deal done. So like if a deal isn't being done, if a good or service is not being exchanged for dollars, then I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but doing a deal actually matters. So what's a deal recently, again, you don't have to mention a specific name or product, but what was the deal recently that you felt, actually, I guess, Mariane, you already mentioned like the huge ARR growth that you had. But
I can talk about that.
Sure.
So Gargi is also part of it. On January 31st, everybody save the date. We are throwing the biggest tech event in San Francisco. We're going to have over 5,000 founders and VC come together
Wow.
to really celebrate the quarter of the century. And we recently closed one of our biggest sponsors, the Agentic, for
Excellent.
thousands of dollars. And we have like 3 in the pipeline.
What's
coming
the website
up
for folks to check that out for Jan 31?
So I would say just save the date. When you subscribe to my newsletter, I'm going to start posting about it as well. But save the date for January 31st, and then it'll go out in all of my newsletter editions, so you're going to see it. But I would love to see you. It's going to happen at a really cool venue, and we're going to celebrate all night, all of us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Gargi, any last minute words here?
Yeah, one more thing. I've been hosting annual tech conferences for the past 10 years, and I'm doing a huge one on Jan 25th, 1 week before this one. And Mariane's actually going to be a speaker,
Cool.
and Agentic is a sponsor. Last year we had over 90% male speakers, so this time it's my personal mission to have over 50% of female speakers, and a lot of the speakers are going to be coming for Women Founders Day. So very excited about that.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you both for jumping on BrainWaves. That's 92.9 FM in Los Gatos and 1.9 FM in Santa Cruz. That's right, Silicon Zombie's BrainWaves on Pirate Cat Radio. Thank you so much, and be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
We did it.
Good job.
Good job.
That was good.
Awesome.
All right.
Good job. That did go fast.
Yeah.